Hi everyone, I'm Daniel.
And I'm Jess, and
we're
we're fontstheduo.
Yay! So this is gonna be the last episode of the Morse Code series.
No, this is gonna be the last episode relating to Morse Code of
That's
the
what I
How
said.
Did You Write That series. I'm right.
On the previous episode, we got together with my friend Xavier, who, like I said, is a synth wizard. We talked music, fun things that went on while we were making the song.
Since today is the last episode relating to Morse Code of the How Did You Write That series, we thought it'd be really cool to bring on our producer. Yay! His name is Mike Poisson.
And he's a lovely individual. So let's get to know him a little bit better.
We're gonna learn lots from him.
And if you haven't already, remember to like and subscribe. Keep up with the latest fonts news.
Hi, Mike!
How are you?
Good. Just enjoying a nice relaxing day in Montreal.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's release day. We're so excited. Thank you so much. This has been such a fun release. So many people are really enjoying the song so far, and they're all commenting on parts that they love. Like, everyone loves the outro. Everyone's like, oh man, like, and we're getting a lot of comments about how we're evolving as artists, and we're like, yeah, we're also collaborating with like really good like artists.
Yeah,
like,
you're a big part of the behind the scenes magic of the song.
but not many people who follow us know who you are. So you want to get into like what projects you've done.
My name is Mike Poisson. I've been recording artists in the Ottawa area for 15 years now. I got my start in the hardcore scene, oddly enough, recording bands that some people may know, some people may not, most people won't know. Yeah, generally a lot of hardcore from the Ottawa region, and not just recording them, but trying to like capture their sound, because the reason I started recording is because so many bands I knew would start and then they'd break up and then no one would ever have heard their music. So I wanted to kind of capture their sound before they fizzled out or what have you.
Break up.
Yeah.
No.
The sibling duo.
Yeah, we're kind of stuck with each other.
Yeah.
Like
The sibling duo is strong.
Yeah.
You were also in a band with
Yep.
your sister.
I am in a band with my sister, and I'm dating a girl who's in a band with her sister. So it's just, I'm very familiar with this idea of the family band.
So we met at Live on Elgin. Like, you've done sound for me for my solo, and every time that I did sound with you, I would learn something new and be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Looping, I was using one mic for everything, and you're like, no, use one mic for your looping and then use one mic for like the main mix. And I'm like, oh, that makes so much more sense. Like, that's so much better. And I kept on seeing projects that you were working on come out. When you released Hey Ryan with Nathan, you released a follow-up of his all those years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's sounding really good. Morse Code kind of has a bit of a Paramore-ish meets John Mayer vibe. And I knew that you were with Mosley and that you'd done some recording with them before. So I was just like, okay, I don't know too many producers. It's really hard for me to give my songs away because I'm very protective of them. They're like your children. And so I was like, if there's anyone that I can trust, I'll put my trust in Mike. Let's see what he does. And I'm so glad I did, man. It turned out so well.
When we heard the first mix, we were like, Daniel listened to it first. He took my headphones that he was listening to, and I sat across the room because I didn't want anything to be spoiled through like a very small muffle. And the whole time he was like, this is very different. I was like, okay. I listened to it and I was like, this is amazing.
Jessica's like, this is like anime music. And I'm like,
This is anime. Wow.
I was like, if anything, the music video should be like us as anime characters.
Like Dragon Ball Z-esque, you're just like Kamehameha.
Yeah.
No, we were mind blown, man. We've never done anything like this before. What is your starting point when you're receiving stems? Because I just kind of said you have creative freedom to do whatever you want. This is a reference track that I lightly mix, so you can kind of imagine how it all sounds together. Where did you go from there?
I can't say it's a very scientific formula. It's very much a perspective-based process where I take your interpretation of the song. I just start to break it apart and see what's happening on each layer by layer basis. So The first listen of just the demo, I got the idea of the rhythm and the flow of the song, where the focus should be. Ultimately, because it was so track heavy, it was really a process of carving out room for things to be able to shine. There were a lot of tracks with a lot of bass frequencies that were just a little too much here or there, so it was really a lot of low carving to make room for the bass, to make room for the kick, just basic stuff. But then the real mixing process came from when I started hearing how that tremolo guitar was working with everything, how some of your sustained harmonies sort of bridged into the next section of the song. I basically did a lot of emphasizing on resonant harmonies. Like there's a few points where I take your guys' harmony, I send it to what I call an infinite reverb, and I just let it go and build it, and I actually put a tremolo on that reverb, and then in the next section hits and I cut it off so that it's just like, now it's the new section, it builds that suspense, and then the new section comes in and it's fresh and it's new. It had a theme. At no point did the song actually truly repeat. It was nice.
We can incorporate that to like James's drum work and like the pre-production done beforehand, because the synths helped a lot. It was like slowly introducing new elements. One of the things I really liked is you took existing elements from the track and you made them feel fresh as it came along. Like I loved how you manipulated the guitar layers. Specifically, there's like a psychedelic kind of sounding one in the background. And I'm like, I'm gonna put the psychedelic in, just fill it out a little bit more. And you manipulated that so intensely. That little
I'll be honest, that's you.
What?
That's
I
me?
just let it happen.
That's not the guitar thing?
That was actually coming from the studio. I didn't do any automation for that. All I did, okay. Phaser. Yeah. So basically, that guitar, it's the original take. I just cut out a lot of the lows. The lows in this guitar were really kind of eating away at where the magic was happening in the upper registers, with that phase, of course. And I actually boosted it for that section.
I love that. I love when that guitar comes in and you just kind of let it shine. It just adds such a refreshing element because the drums really hit hard at that moment.
Ultimately, that is the role of the producer. Is if something's already there that's magic, just don't forget to notice it, because usually it's already there.
One of the things that everybody loves, like even before we released the song, my dad was just like, the vocals are so sick in this song. And specifically the outro, we're divided. I'm kind of singing my own melody, which is kind of like the pre-chorus melody, and Jessica is belting.
Yeah, I love that part.
I love that part too. I was in a hardcore band with my sister, and she did a lot of belting too. So I really like highlighting, girls who just fucking let it rip. When I got this track, that part was actually, I was a little worried about it because there were a lot of elements happening at the same time. And all of them were really cool. What I realized later on in the mixing was that some of these elements were already happening before that section. So what that gives you is this sort of like, it's a cognitive hacking trick where if something has already repeated, you don't necessarily need it at the same volume for someone to hear it, right? If you introduce a signal, the human mind can detect it more easily if you repeat it amidst noise. There were parts that I peeled away to make room for the new things at that section of the song, so as to not kind of be overwhelming in a mixed sense. So the things I highlighted were your belting, Dan's vocal, and I separated them a bit with Pan, but really the way you guys wrote it, what notes you were choosing to do, they didn't actually interfere with each other that much. So I didn't really have to do much as far as playing with pan. If you're playing with left and right too much, you're not playing the game right. Most people actually listen to music in a mono capacity nowadays. Whether it's out of a phone speaker or out of a stereo system that's too far away to actually perceive the difference between left and right. So you can't rely on the difference between left and right to give you your mix. So thankfully you guys wrote the song well enough where you guys are sonically and harmonically apart from each other so that you can hear both of you at the same time. You're complementing each other. Your vocals at that point, when you're belting, give this sort of a resolving effect on Dan's homage to the main theme of the song. That was the highlight. Bringing the chorus back into it was I just started hearing it, but I realized I had to put it in pretty, it's really deep in the mix. It's actually very hard to hear. If you were to hear that part of the song first, before you ever heard any other part of the song, you may not be able to hear the ooze because you were introduced to it twice. The ear can it's this principle I kind of, when I was in the hardcore band, me and our guitarist Justin, we had this thing where when we were writing, we talked about the ghost notes. Basically these things that you hear that aren't there yet. But if you hear them, put them there because they're meant to be there, You
took into account the structure of the song. We always did the ooh thing, but it's not until you put it to the end, I'm like, oh, the oohs they're the chorus. And all you're really doing in the outro is like, oh, let me put in one final chorus.
When you were continuing the vision of the song, did you have multiple ideas for where you wanted to take it?
I can't say I did. You treat the mixing process as kind of walking along a path and discovering things as you go. Some people can take that journey and make it sort of I'm going to walk down both paths simultaneously. It really was because it was so well written and very well layered. The idea of options wasn't really. I mean, I wouldn't say I wouldn't mix it differently if I started now. I might, but where it took me is just where I was at the time. I'll be honest, I didn't attack it with a plan. I didn't. It was all instinctual.
I do it. When I was pre-producing Morse Code, I put it off for a long time. Let's make a demo before taking it to the studio. So a lot of Jessica's vocals that you hear in the beginning originally were my vocals doing, I'm not as good as riffing as Jessica, but I'd be I kind of imagine there was a bunch of other guitar parts that at the moment when I first started introducing them, I'm like, oh, these are cool. That's just how you go about it. You keep on putting ideas and then I'd show it to other people and be like, I think it's kind of cool. What do you think? And then once you hear feedback, you think more about the part and you're like, yeah, maybe we'll put it off. Maybe. And then sometimes you bring it back because how you played around with the synth part. You know how in the beginning, there's the intro synth.
Yeah.
Which melds really well with Jessica's vocals. And then when we get to the first pre-chorus, I just kind of hit random notes on the piano, like the bum, 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 bum.
Well, you're working up the scale there.
Yeah.
And I showed it to Jessica, and she's like, I don't really like it too much. And I was just like, well, I'm gonna send it to Mike, see what he does with it, and then I like it. It sounds great. Everybody likes it now.
And then now I like. Daniel really pushed me with the track though, especially with the harmonies, and he was always like, we should add a vocal part here, just in the background. And I was like, no, it doesn't need. I guess I just need a bit of a push. And especially the bridge harmony, the
Ghost.
I was so frustrated.
And we record in our parents' closet, so once you're in there for a long time, it gets really hot and you're frustrated. And Jessica's like, oh, I don't really want to. And then I'm like, no, just try this weird harmony kind of thing. And that's probably one of my favorite parts of the track.
Yeah.
Because there's so many harmonies going on in the bridge at the same time. Meanwhile, all these dual guitars are happening. It's really cool, man.
Mm-hmm. And that ghost, that multiple harmony with the ascending bits, it gives that kind of creepy vibe, right? It's a ghost. You're talking to a ghost. That's creepy. Actually, a lot of my I was a couple years ago listening to this album, Go by Jonesy. It is so rife with vocal layers that I am so glad I listened to that, because this was sort of like my test of, did you listen to that album well enough to know how to handle all this? And I definitely use that as a reference point. It's okay to have vocals dry. It's okay to have them really far back if they're kind of supporting it in a certain way. And you guys had a lot of like really diverse backing vocals.
So you kept some stuff dry and then some stuff is kind of like reverbed in the back?
I mean, nothing's perfectly dry, but it's effectively dry, some of it, yeah.
I included a lot of samples. You kind of agreed with most of the samples. The locker dials that are just kind of randomly like in the chorus, it's just like, oh, it's just kind of on the lower end now. I really like the Morse code, like the actual beeps. I was worried when I was putting it in because I was just like, how am I gonna fit this into the track? But it's so clean. Like you can clearly hear it and it doesn't feel like annoying. It's just like a really nice texture piece.
I'll be honest, a lot of that had to do with, I don't like thanking plugins for this, but I bought a pack from Sound Toys and they have some really cool distortion modeling, drive modeling, and I used a lot of it for all of this, because a lot of the samples that you put, the sound effects, they had very harsh transient sounds, which are hard to translate when you've got drums going and guitars going. Either it's not loud enough and you just hear like a bit of clicking, or it's too loud and it's just overwhelming. So when you push that into like an overdrive and, you know, EQ it just right, then you hear it as the ear would hear it, you know, a little bit more, but a little cooler. It ended up working out. Most of them fit in. The UFO sound was cool.
You cleaned that up a lot. You cleaned that up a lot.
It's really in there, I'll be honest. I actually kind of hike it at the end here. I don't know if you'll hear it. And there's a lot of delay.
It's so funny to individually hear these elements without the song in the back, because you're just kind of, when was that in there? It's like, oh no, it's in there, and
it's in there. Yeah.
And you feel it. It's like a cool addition, but it's not meant to take over the song. It's just kind of meant to add that little bit of ambience and be a special surprise. If you listen to it again, you're like, oh, I didn't, like, what was that in the background?
It's so cool that you guys are not just writing music, but you're writing soundscapes. And I really love that. And yeah, I didn't want to take away from that at all. I know a lot of engineers who'd probably, you know, look sideways at it and be like, that's not music. But, you know, it's art.
Yeah, if you think about it as a painting, it's like, well, there's still room to put like this little piece of texture. If you're not really looking for those little pieces of texture, all those kind of sounds, the song sounds a bit blander. You don't really appreciate them until they're gone, or if they were gone. I'm really happy because I felt that you took the ideas that I gave you and you're like, all right, let me see how I can help enhance these ideas, rather than just be like, no, you're wrong. No, I felt really comfortable with the fact that, hey, he took everything that I gave him and he's like, let me see if this has like a special kind of part or theme that it can play throughout the song. I appreciate that, man. Okay, this is a huge argument between me and my sister.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Right. Okay, I saw this.
So, second pre-chorus of the song.
Second pre-chorus.
It's at 2 minutes.
There seems to be like a bit of like a vocal delay.
I don't pretend like I don't know. This isn't always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you kind of repeat it, like it's like reverb, and I'm like, that's me. And Jessica's like, no, that's me.
But
I'm gonna have it soloed so that you hear it raw. Da, 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 da. Okay.
All
things go now. It's both of you. That's the answer. Here.
Don't know, this isn't always how things go. And now I'm talking with a ghost. And now I'm talking with a ghost. I don't pretend like I don't know. It's a shadow letting things all go. Cause I've been talking
Is it
to
the
a
both of
ghost.
us?
Cause I've been talking to a ghost.
Okay. I thought what you did is you took one of my other vocal layers, because
Yeah.
what you did with me and Jessica during that part was you really let my lower like octave kind of like shine, and so I would build her up, her voice, because her voice is higher than mine, and that's why we usually sing a lot of stuff like that. Like she kind of carries the melody and I bass it. But I also recorded octave higher.
I kept that.
And so I thought you took that octave higher stem and then reverbed it weird, put it in that section, and I was the extra. I was like, that's me. That's Octave Daniel.
Let's just get a bit of Octave Daniel in there. He doesn't get a lot of...
I don't pretend like I don't know. It's a shadow letting things all go.
You can hear it, right?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
I actually have an octave effect on it to give you even a top sort of, it's like an octave fuzz.
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking to a ghost, cause I've been talking to a...
Oh, that actually makes sense for other parts in the song. When I would, in the first chorus as well, it just sounded like there was something that was even an octave higher that was just like, like the very, very subtle. And I was like, what is that? But now I know it's Octave Daniel.
Yeah.
Octave Daniel. Yeah. Good band name, Octave Daniel.
You really added a lot of color to the bass, because I'm not a bassist. Really, I just kind of dabble here and there.
You took lessons right before the session, I hear?
Yeah. I went on YouTube and I was just like, how to properly run. Because one of the things I didn't want to do is I didn't want to hit the lower strings and have some other strings on the top vibrating, because that happens a lot with bass and it muddies it up. So like I practiced a lot of like running down scales lightly, muting all the proper strings so I wasn't overdoing any extra frequencies I didn't want, because you can't really tell until you kind of capture it like a recording. You're like, oh, I caught extra mud because I wasn't muting the strings I didn't want to use.
I've been through a lot of that. Bassists who, they don't realize they're hitting a note on the lower string, and once you run a drive on that, you can hear it, and it really does get in the way of things. Sometimes it's cool for certain bands, but if there's a lot going on, you want to be precise.
I think it depends on the song, but for this I was just like, I just kind of want a clean bass. I didn't play too much around with the tone because I rented a bass amp and I just kind of plugged in.
There was really one section that I loved with the bass right at the beginning. You kind of hear this distortion kind of rising. Yeah. Have you ever heard of a band called Emery?
No.
Anyway, this is like emo band from early 2000s, but they had this album that they came out with called The Week's End. It was like their big break. They self-recorded and everything, and they had this one song, I don't know, it just hit you right in the feels, and there was this quiet part, and they had the bass just rang out, and then they turned up the drive after hitting the note. And that's basically what I did there, because I heard the bass ringing out, and I was like, it's about to get lit. Like, the drummer is about to start just hammering, and I was like, you know what, let's turn up the drive. That's literally what I did there, is just...
Oh, that's great. I thought that was the synth.
Well, because it's a stereo distortion, so it's hard to pick it out as the bass. But yeah, I kept the distortion as stereo, so it doesn't get in the way with the main soul of the bass, but it thickens it for sure.
And how did you deal with mixing the drums? Was that a difficult thing for you?
It was very difficult. The snare, it was a good snare. I could tell it was well tuned. The mic didn't seem like it was close enough. I was actually getting more hi-hat than snare, which was a bummer. I hate when that happens. But luckily, I recorded all of my own drums in Ottawa. I am a drummer, so it was the first thing I ever recorded. So when I moved out to Montreal, I knew I would probably not have access to a drum kit all the time because I live in a, very small apartment. And so I tracked everything with multiple mics. I did like lots of different hits and basically made a virtual drum kit in case I ever ran into a situation like this, where there are good elements, but then elements that are taking away a bit from what the song could be. And for me as a recording engineer, for the longest time, I've struggled with the idea of drum replacement. Me as a drummer, I've always been against it. And then I started listening to this really great recording podcast, and it taught me that most people, as an engineer, you're like a waiter at a restaurant. And you're supposed to serve the client and the market that the client is trying to be exposed to with something that they can enjoy. Most people wouldn't care if you used a gas grill or an electric grill if you made a fantastic steak, right? So it doesn't matter what the tools you use are. What matters is the result. And the one thing I took with me from my previous opinion is that if I can hear that it's fake, it's not good enough. So I made sure that it sounded like a real kit. If you were to solo it, you wouldn't be able to tell. To the point where actually the toms are completely replaced. It was my heart broke when I realized this. I went, eternal sad face and said, okay, I have to replace these toms. But luckily, your boy played them perfectly. So it was actually quite easy to sample them. That's the one thing I will say is like, he played so clearly and definitely that it made resampling things more of a breeze. I actually took the toms that I had recorded in Ottawa and I tuned them to the same pitch as the toms that you recorded in Toronto, because the room sound is still there. I can actually just get that here. Kind of hard to hear, probably. Right. Sounds very roomy. Fast forward. So when he plays, you hear the room mics and you still hear the original toms from the rooms. So I knew that if I didn't have the right pitch on the toms that I'm replacing them with, you're gonna hear some weird sonic stuff. So I actually made sure that it doesn't even sound like it's out of place. Right? It just sounds like the toms that were there, but they're not the toms that were there. But yeah, so it was a long process of balancing, punchiness, but with naturality. And I think I got something I was pretty happy with. I'm very picky with how my drums sound, and I'm very happy with how it turned out.
Yay!
That's good, man, because I know nothing about like mixing drums. I kind of just parallel compress stuff if I ever do drums, and then I'm like, this is good. Like I would, if I were to mix the drums, I would not have noticed those fine details. That's why it's so cool that you're not just the sound engineer, you're also a musician. You take into consideration the rhythm of the song and then what's driving it, like the punchiness and everything. It takes a lot of patience to get there.
A lot of that actually, it comes from sort of a two-tiered experience between studio. I started in 2005 just recording hardcore bands. Most hardcore bands don't give a crap how they sound, but I gave a crap how they sounded. If you come out with bad stuff, that gets around. And then a couple of years ago, I started really mixing a lot more live. Sound in a live environment is very hard to deal with. You deal with a lot of what's called phase. Basically, you're forced to learn physics. If you don't learn physics, you'll suck.
When stuff is out of phase, I'm like, I don't want to go into this too much, but I know it's important. Like, especially because I really like MS recording. I think that's awesome. But there's so many phasing issues and stuff that people deal with when they're doing MS, and I'm kind of like, I should learn more about the room I'm in so I can do MS like the best way possible.
Yeah, what you're talking about, mid-side recording, I too have been afraid of it. We all are afraid of it, just because, you know, you learn early on, you can't just take the same track. Like, a lot of people want to have a doubled guitar sound. So they take one track of their guitar and then they copy it and then they pan it left to right. Well, guess what? That doesn't work. That just means it's mono. Then you try to reverse the phase of the right one, and then you realize, oh, but if you play this on a mono speaker, then you just don't hear the guitars because it cancels out, because that's how sound works. For mid-side, you know, you capture the stereo qualities of the room. This will be the stereo qualities of the room. And then you get also the main mono of the guitar. What you need to do to make sure that this doesn't interfere is just bring it down a bit. That's all you need to do. Really, then it just works. It's that simple. Because volume, if you have something reverse phase that is of equal volume, then it'll cancel it out. But if it's less volume, then it will cancel it out less. All sound is kind of juggling between knowing the kind of mind-bending reality of it and then just kind of being okay with it. And as long as it sounds good, it works.
As a producer, what was your favorite part about the song?
The end. Actually, no, the very, like, the last note, it's not my favorite part, but figuring out that, oh, instead of like having all the notes ring out, the way it just sounded when everything cut off and it was just the bass kind of melded with that last radio interference thing. Because every band ends with the, you know, oh, it's the root note and we're gonna ring it. So I was like, how do we avoid that without being too obvious that we're avoiding it? But no, my favorite part about this whole process was figuring out how to juggle everything that was going on in that final chorus. Is that a chorus?
Outro, like outro chorus, like
outro thing. The big, you know, the metal part. My girlfriend's taking cognitive science right now, McGill, and she's been listening to a lot of lectures just online out loud. So I've been like grabbing things here or there. The human ear is really good. The human mind is really good at sifting through extraneous data and picking up what's important. And usually what's important is what you've heard before. So I was able to take out half of the mix and actually go, boop, you don't need to be that loud, boop, boop, let's bring out the new bits, like the, you know, the bits that no one's heard yet. That was a relief because I didn't think it would work at first because I want to be able to hear everything at the same time. But when you get over 10, 20, 30, 92 tracks, it gets hard, you know, to keep that level of detail. So you have to make sacrifices, but thankfully the human mind can be easily tricked by, oh, you think it's still that loud, but it's not. So.
All right, that was your favorite part. What was the hardest part of the song, you would say?
I would say the hardest part was finding the right balance between the harmonies. It was a lot of trial and error because I don't know why. I just know that I kept coming back to it and thinking it's not quite right. For every point where there are layered backup harmonies, figuring out, okay, what part of this arrangement do I want to highlight? Do I want to highlight the, you know, the root, third, the fifth, you know, where do I want to go with this? And then there were points where I actually changed the hierarchy kind of halfway through because sometimes the melody of a harmony goes from one person and then it's sent into another person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I liked that, but it was the hardest part because there was a lot of ambiguity. Wow. Enunciation with that.
How did you treat the guitar solos?
Oh, how did I do that? Okay, so I left each guitar solo track raw. So there were two tracks.
Mm-hmm.
There was, it was like a harmony solo, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
May as well play it right now.
It's funny when you think about it.
What I did was you can't tell because what you're getting is mono, but I panned them 100%. Wow, okay, I did that. And then I just EQ'd them together. Again, they were a little low heavy, a lot of low cutting, just to clean it up. I compressed them together. I actually added a bit more drive to them. Not much, actually, just a bit of fuzz. And then a lot of delay.
Have you ever played Super Smash?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a very Super Smash part.
Okay.
Okay.
I was like, when Daniel first came up with that solo, I was like, that sounds like the Super Smash, like dun, 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 dun,
Captain
It
Falcon?
sounds like Captain Falcon.
yeah.
Captain Falcon.
I was just like, oh, does that mean you don't like it? She's like, no, I love it. And I was just like, okay.
I thought the exact same thing.
During the second verse, there's like a lot going on. There's the synths are going on. There's the psychedelic guitar layer is going on. And then the acoustic is also in the mix. So like, how was balancing all that? It's the same thing with the bridge. There's like a lot of stuff and you had just enough acoustic kind of cutting through that it felt like really nice, but not like it's taking over the song still.
Yeah, well, the acoustic was a really nice piece of audio to work with. As an engineer, you kind of picture certain pieces of audio. You can replace them with certain ideas in your mind. Like this was a Cadillac. The acoustic was a Cadillac, you know, it wasn't like super fancy, but you could rely on it. And it was kind of really nice to just bring up in any point. It was luxurious. You did a really good job recording it. And I had a lot of fun with it. In the second verse you were saying? Actually, oddly enough, no, I would say it's fairly loud there. Yeah, for the verses, I tried to highlight the acoustic because there was a lot of really good, you know, like picking parts. That's not finger picking though. That's picking, right?
No, that's like, I don't use a pick, but yeah, I love how you made it so it like cut through the mix. When I recorded the acoustic for the chorus, where you just kind of hear like those muted strings, like it's a lot of like scratchiness, I kept it and I was like, I'm gonna give it to Mike. I kept it. If it was up to me, I'd probably take it out because I don't know, I feel like it's kind of clunky. But you're like, yeah, let's add some more percussion in there, and it just sounded so good.
Yeah, I ran away with those actually. Like that?
Yeah.
For every scratched note, I actually turned on a distortion plugin and turned down the stereo qualities of the mic. So the acoustic was done MS, mid-side, so it had a lot of stereo qualities about it. When you're doing something percussive like a breakdown, you don't really want too much stereo activity going on. If you've had stereo stuff happening in the past, like you want to create a contrast between, oh, it's flowy and it's a big expansive spot, and then it's a breakdown and it's right dead center, right in your face, you know, you're fighting the music, it's in your face, wow. And so what I did is for each scratch, I turned on distortion just to like really thicken up those scratches. I felt like they were played so tight, and I felt like if I could kind of fuse them with the drums, you know, kind of just have them kind of become one with the drums in those parts. So that was the approach behind that. I was like, let's just distort them to, you know, a bit and make them sound like drums.
Well, man, it worked wonderfully. Like, it was cool that you came up with ideas that I wasn't even thinking. Like, it's interesting. It's the whole like, oh, one man's garbage is another man's treasure. I'm like, I would not use this, and you're just like, oh, this, I wanna. This is a good part. Like, I wanna add it onto it, and I was just, it's so interesting that like when you're collaborating with other people, how others see the value in things that you normally wouldn't see the value, and then you're like, yeah, no, that was a good part. I totally thought it was garbage, but it's like, you're like, no, it worked, man. Is there anything else in the song that you wanted to highlight, that you wanted to touch upon?
I was very much attacking it every moment I had, sort of creative energy. If I felt like my mind was not giving out good ideas, I would just be like, nope, let's take a break, step back from this, go listen to something else. Actually, I listened to a lot of Half Moon Run while working on this. Yeah, because I realized that sort of the instrument layout and the feel was, I mean, not exact, but comparable. And yeah, they're a good reference because they do a lot of experimentation, like you guys, and not just music, but soundscapes. It was a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
When I got into this project, it was, I just went at it. And, I tried to make my project organized, and I realized the other day when I opened it up again, it's like, wow, I named things weird things just to remember what they were. There's 93 tracks that are used. That's a lot. It's a lot of things. Other than that, though, honestly, it was a great experience, and the creativity you guys put into your songwriting is refreshing.
Yay.
There are a lot of musicians who could take a note from this and not just see their songs as a verse and a chorus, but as a story in itself. And, you know, the music can tell the story, but if you have other things to add to the recording experience, you know, weird sounds, stuff like that, sometimes those weird sounds are the magic in a recording. Recording is it's a very precious art, and we have all these microphones. We can capture air that happened at one time and share that air with another person. And as long as we keep these files, we can share them with whoever we want until the end of time. It's the weird stuff that really makes it.
Definitely some sounds that I was just like, I don't know if this is gonna fit in. Like, this is some weird kind of ugly sounding piece of music that I'm adding in. Specifically when the breakdown starts, when it's like talking, there's this little kind of alien sounding like yes, I love that sound. I think the sound is so cool. But you wouldn't listen to that sound and be like, this needs to be in a song. This is just what my life is about.
Really, I really saturated that radio static. It's there, but it doesn't get in the way, right? It really had to be pushed to the limit, and it's doing a lot of stereo stuff too, which is nice.
I think overall, everyone's really liking the song. But even more importantly, like, before the song was released, we were all really happy with it. We were proud of the song, regardless of what people think. Like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's always nice when people are on board with like, yeah, it is pretty cool. It's like, that's a great feeling. But it's definitely a great feeling to finally have it out and people enjoying it so much.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
I would say, as a last note, what are your thoughts on future collaborations with us?
My thoughts are very encouraging. I don't know if that's proper grammar. I'm super excited to work with you guys more because you guys are just bursting with creativity, and you guys have great ideas. You take criticism very well. I couldn't ask to be working with, you know, a better group.
Yay!
Aww, that's so sweet. Yay!
Thank you for providing such a comforting environment for us.
Yes.
I highly recommend you to anyone who wants to work with you, because
Work with a producer in general.
yeah, you made that transition very smooth. You made me feel like we were peers rather than making me feel like you know best, which is very, very nice. Thank you so much for joining us today, man. This was a great experience.
Thanks, man. Well, thank you guys.
Anyways, we hope you have a wonderful day.
And happy
Friday.
release day.
Yeah, happy release day. See ya.
Wow, that was so fun.
That was fun. We learned things that we were arguing about for a while. Just overall, it's cool to kind of dive deeper into what went down in the mix. We really hope you enjoyed that as much as we did.
Yeah, as you can see, everyone that was involved in this project put a lot of heart and soul into it, and we couldn't be more grateful. We're really happy we got to work with this group of people, even if it wasn't all in one go. Every single person had their part of the process, but it was a lot of fun.
And thank you to everybody who has checked out the song, shared the song, or even just
Listen to
it in the background. I don't know. Told a friend. We're very appreciative. We've gotten a lot of lovely comments from people. The response has been great. we just want to say thank you for everyone who watched this far into the series. That's really cool.
Yes, that means a lot. It really does.
Even if it's just the first video that you decided to watch, we want to end it off with the same note. We've been ending it from the beginning. Remember to create, express yourself, and please be vulnerable. Have a great night, everyone.